Hey, everybody. It is Tuesday evening. That means it's time to grandstand with Mother Teresa. I hope that you've had a great week thus far. I know today is only Tuesday, but I am glad that you have had a good week and a blessed week since yesterday and starting today. Listen, let me just tell you again, as I was sharing with you on last week, that this is back to school time. So it's a lot of hustle and bustle in my world. So that means it's been a lot going on. It's been a lot of in services. It's been a lot of things that we have been doing just to make sure that our teachers and our educators, as they come back and as they prepare for the students, that they are prepared. And one of the things that we talked about today, and I want to share a little bit about the topic that we discussed on today, or the presentation that I presented today. And the presentation was about trauma and how to have a trauma informed classroom. And as an educator, one of the questions that we ask those that that were in attendance, and it was for our new teachers to the district. And one of the questions that we asked them is that, did you ever think that you would have to talk about trauma or deal with trauma in the classrooms? And some of them, yeah, of course, shook their heads and said yes. And then there were several that shook their heads and said no. But let me just tell you, with life, trauma is a part of our lives. And we brought out several points on today that I'm going to share with you. You know, one of the things we talked about is the different types of trauma. You know, we can have acute trauma that is because of a single event. That means that it's trauma that's brought on by it's suddenly, and it's brought on by, could possibly be a single event. Like, for instance, like the hurricane that we just recently had. And then we talked about chronic trauma. That means that something has been going on in your life for quite some time. It may be a repetitive thing. And then we talked about having complex trauma. That means that it could be an acute thing, but it's that has been triggered by a chronic thing or something that has been ongoing. And let me just share with you all, you know, as I grow older and as I experience different things, I realized that I missed quite a few things when I was growing up, as far as being able to understand the different things about how people react to certain things or how people dealt with certain things. And as a child, I say I missed it, but it could have just been because I didn't know. But a lot of times when people were dealing with things, or as people deal with things, you know, something kicks in called defense mechanisms. And those defense mechanisms kick in because they are trying to protect, you know, the person from some of the things that possibly could have happened to them in like their childhood or in their life. And those defense mechanisms, one of them could be that you block things out, and you don't remember it, or you know, you are at the stage of denial where you want to deny that it happened. But those are some of the defense mechanisms. It's several of them. I think it's about 9. But those are some things that I wanted to share with you all, because growing up as a child, you know, one of the things that I do know that for me, there was a lot of things that I could not remember. And of course, this is not a confession or anything like that. But sometimes I have to question and say, you know, do I not remember certain things because there was something that was traumatic? Or it's just something that I just can't remember. You know, I'm 60 years old, and is it things that I just cannot remember? But you know, one of the things, as we talked about today, is we didn't really get into like the childhood things, the childhood issues. But and of course, a lot of times when we're dealing or we're talking about trauma, we typically, you know, as a mental health professional, we typically will go to what are some of the things that happened, you know, in your childhood. What are some of the things that you endured as a young person that could be affecting how you behave today? And sometimes we are very surprised at the things that some people had to endure as a child. And that explains, some of the ways that they behave, some of the actions that they may take, and some of how they may move, how they may interact with other people, is because they are dealing with maybe some childhood trauma. And sometimes those childhood trauma, was not dealt with. They were not given the opportunity to seek professional advice. They were not given the opportunity to go and sit with a therapist and talk with them or talk through the issues that they faced. We talked a little bit today about, the old saying, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I have often said that, I do not agree with that, especially as I have gotten older. That's one of the things that I definitely do not agree with, because sometimes there were some terrible things that was happening, in people's homes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't need to be kept. If y'all see me messing with this, I'm still trying to get everything together. I'm trying to make sure that I can see some of the comments if you all are making, because right now I cannot see the comments. So I'm trying to make sure that I can see the comments as you are speaking to me. And I'm going to get it together. There it is. I'm going to get it together and see the comments. Okay, you take this phone and you can log in there, and I've got that. Okay, thank you, honey. My honey is right here making sure I'm able to get everything together so I can see some of the things that you've got going on. All right, so one of the things that I was sharing with you all is that sometimes what is happening as people are dealing with trauma, they are, some of the things that may have happened to them in the past, they've chosen to, or I won't say they've chosen to, but their body has, in defense of the body, to defend or to protect the body, they've forgotten about some things. And so their memory won't allow them to actually remember the things that had caused the trauma. And so we were just discussing that a little bit on today. And again, I'll go back to what I was saying, is that sometimes the things that is happening in people's homes, we were taught that basically, what goes on in this house stays in this house. This is our business. These are the things that we are dealing with, and it's not necessarily for the public. Well, again, there can be a lot of terrible things that's happening in some of our students' homes, and because that has been drilled into them, they are afraid to reach out for help. And so that means that our students stay in situations much longer than they have to. So I'm going to tell you all, the people that are watching me, and if you watch this later on the replay, please don't do that to your kids. Don't tell them that, because when they actually need the help, and it may not necessarily be you as a person who is inflicting some of the things or causing these kids to have trauma, but it could be somebody else that's connected to your home or connected to your family, and because they have been told not to tell, then those things go untold for years, if ever. And so please don't do that. Please do not don't tell your children that, okay? And you may say, well, this is what you can't tell me what to do in my house. And I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I will say this: when you know to do better, you do better. Trauma affects a lot of people. And like I said, when you're thinking about the things that we're going through, or we think about the things that happen in our everyday lives, we talked about Hurricane Beryl. And of course, yes, we're going to talk about that for a little while longer, because that itself was a trigger for someone else, for some people who had been in a hurricane before and they suffered loss, okay? So sometimes when the winds start blowing, and hey my children, hey everybody that's watching, when the winds start blowing or the rains get a little heavy, the thunder comes, For some people, it triggers them. It may trigger them for the Hurricane Harvey, or it may trigger them for Hurricane Rita. You know, those are some of the major ones that has happened in my lifetime. So when I think about, you know, the rains coming and everything that's happening right now, my mindset is, are we going to have to go through what we went through before? Okay. And for some, you know, some people, I really hope and pray that everyone has regained their electricity, has regained their, you know, their internet, all of the things that they lost or they were without during the hurricane. I hope that you've regained all of those things. But that was a time during which several people suffered major loss. Some people suffered and they lost their lives or they lost their loved ones. So those things can and will be a trigger from for people to come. And so, you know, even for the young people, for, you know, like my grandchildren, my younger set of grandchildren, you know, they of course lost power. They didn't lose it for very long, but they didn't have to really suffer through it much. But they remember something that happened during the course of their summer break that I hope that they will be able to talk about it and move on. So those are some things that we talked about. And we also wanted the educators to be mindful of when children show up in your classroom and they are behaving in a way that you know that is maybe not typical. I say typical behavior. You know, on the during the conversation today, we talked about some students will go inward, but then others will begin to act out because of the trauma that they have suffered in their lives. And so, as educators or people that work with the school or work with people in general, you need to know how to deal with them. You need to know how to hold space for them. You need to know how to be able to have a relationship with them. And we talked about building relationships. Let me just tell you all, the thing about relationships, and I see myself shifting right now, the thing about relationships with your teachers or with the people that you're interacting with every day, especially in the school setting, that is so key. Let me tell you, kids will work for teachers that they like. They will make sure that they are performing at the best of their ability. They will make sure that they are behaving in that classroom because they like the teacher. They may not necessarily like the subject that you're teaching, but because they like the teacher, they will behave. They will do things that maybe that they won't do in the teacher down the hallways class. They may be a cut up in there because they may not like that teacher. Okay? So educators, think about that. When you have students that are being difficult in a classroom, think to yourself, have I tried to build a relationship with these students, or am I just going through the day-to-day things of trying to make sure that they are prepared to pass the test? Okay, so make sure that you're building relationships with your students, and not only building relationships with your students, but you should be building relationships with their families. And one of the things that I do know is that if you build relationships with the families, those families and those parents can be your greatest allies whenever there is a situation that you need to have a conversation with them about. They become your allies because you've built that relationship. You've taken the time. You have taken the time and invested yourself into those students. And let me tell you, it does make a difference. I can remember when I was in school, you know, I remember several of my teachers, especially my fourth and fifth grade teachers. I can remember Miss Woods, Martha Woods. If anybody is listening to me, if you went to Nettie Marshall, you probably, during the time that I went, you probably remember Miss Martha Woods. First of all, Miss Woods was an African American lady, and she was always so well put together. Miss Woods was firm, but she was definitely fair. She was my teacher who made me want to do better, made me want to aspire to do greater things. And it wasn't so much of Well, it was what she did, what she said, but it was also how she made me feel. One of the things about Miss Woods is that she held space for all of her kids. She took the time to talk to us, not only about the subject. No, I can't even remember what Miss Woods taught. I really can't. But I remember Miss Woods. She was my favorite teacher, my fifth grade teacher. And the other thing, I remember another fifth grade teacher, and it's not with fond memories. I remember one of my teachers that was very stern. She was very harsh. Her name was Miss Honey. And Miss Honey and I did not have a good relationship. It seemed like we were a bother to her. And that just, I don't know if any of her grandchildren, her great grandchildren, may be even alive. But let me just tell you, my experience with her was not good. And I remember that huge contrast between the teacher that I absolutely loved being in her classroom to one that I dreaded. And let me just tell you, probably my grades were not the very best in, well, I say that. No, my grades were good. My grades was pretty much good all across the board. But I can guarantee you I probably paid a lot more attention in Miss Wood's classroom simply because I liked her and I could tell that she liked me. And so, educators, make sure that you're putting in that extra effort to build those relationships with your kids, that you're building relationships with your families, and see how that works for you this school year. If you haven't been doing that, see how that works for you this school year. I can almost guarantee you, if you put in the work, you're going to have a better year. You're going to have a year that you're not having to deal with a lot of disruptions in the classroom, that you're not going to have a lot of things, wasted time where you're having to, challenge kids or redirect those kids that are causing the rest of the kids to get off task. Try building relationships with your students, and I can almost guarantee you that you will have a pretty good year. So, talking about trauma, let me just tell you, trauma is drama. Trauma can be drama because sometimes when you're dealing with the trauma and you're bringing up all of the issues that comes along with it, some drama that you may not be prepared to deal with. You may not be prepared to talk to different people about the things that have happened in your lives. We also talked about, trauma can be cause PTSD and also anxiety and different things like that. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about anxiety because I experienced, I think, for the first time when we were in Colorado. And I know my kids, I have worked with many kids and adults that are dealing with anxiety. And I never knew how that felt, personally until I experienced it. And when you're feeling, anxious or having like an anxiety attack, it's almost like you can't breathe, like you cannot catch your breath. And not only could I not really catch my breath, and I noticed, of course, my breathing was different, but it was like I had lost a little bit of control. Okay, all right, you like Miss Woods too? Yes, she was a great teacher, and she genuinely cared. You absolutely right, Cent. She's one that I will never forget. But going back to the anxiety and different things like that, um, again, I had never experienced that. And so to experience that, first of all, I recognized it for what it was. I recognized that, hey, this is a feeling that I've never felt before. And I also noticed that, I think the first indication was my breathing had changed. Although we were, ascending and, changing altitudes and different things like that. And I noticed that my breathing was changing. But I also began to notice how my body began to feel. There was like a tightness in my body where I was tense and different things like that. And I knew what the source of it was. But just think about it, you all. If you, as a young person, now I'm 60 years old and I was able to recognize it for what it is because of what I do. But guess what? If you have a person, a child, or even an adult that they are saying that they are having these types of feelings, what do you do? How do you help them? If it's your child and they're saying, I just don't feel right, I don't feel like myself, how do you handle that? Do you just push them aside and say, oh, go on to your bedroom, you'll be fine, or whatever the statement may be that is dismissive? Well, what if you were not dismissive? What if you actually took the time to listen to what they had to say? Okay? We talk about making space for people or holding space for people. That just simply means that you are taking time away from your busy schedule. You're putting down your computer, you're putting down your tablet, you're putting down your cell phone, you're putting it down everything to listen to what your child is saying. And I can remember, I don't know if it probably was Will, um, but I recall one of my kids telling me, I was on the phone and I was talking to them, and I was probably scrolling, like I often do. And I remember one of my kids was telling me, Mama, you're not even paying attention to me. Put your phone down and listen, okay? And when they said that, and of course my husband tells me that sometimes now, honey, put your phone down. You're not paying attention. And so I have to be mindful of that because it is so easy to get wrapped up and we're just scrolling, we're just looking, we're just, whatever. And we're so wrapped up in what we're doing. It's almost like we're captivated with that cell phone. You know what? In in my book, okay, there is a chapter in here about, and if you haven't picked up this book yet, it's still on Amazon. All right, you need to get you a copy. In in this book, there is a chapter about, here it is, right here, chapter 32. It's digital detox with intention. It says day number 94. It says reflect on a day when you intentionally took a break from the screens. How does how did it feel? Okay? And then another prompt, it says share tips for a successful digital detox experience, and then discuss the benefits of unplugging and reconnecting with the present. That is something that many of us probably need to do, including me. Taking a little bit of time away from our screens, the many screens that we have in our life. Taking the time to have a digital detox, because I can tell you that our cell phones, our devices, they take up a lot of time. And if you're not careful, you can spend the entire day watching either movies, okay, or scrolling on your devices. And if you're spending all day doing that, okay, for some people that are convalescent or they may not be where they can actually get out and go and work, so those screens are their life, that's their connection to the outside world or whatever. But I will say, not all of your day should not be spent on screens. And so one of the things that in here, it says take a digital detox. So take a digital detox and see how it feels. Put away the screens, put away all of those things, and actually be in the present. And when it says reconnect with your present, that means sometimes for some of us, it's reconnecting with the people that are in our house. Will that give you a little bit more time to have a conversation with your family, with your spouse, with your honey, with your children in your house? Would that give you a little bit more time to spend with your grandchildren if you are not in the screens, okay? For some of us, absolutely. And for some, it may not be, okay? Because this is one of the things that I do know. The things that we absolutely love to do is the absolute hardest things to give up. But that's when it comes that we have to know that do we have power over the screens, or do the screens have power over us? Now, it may not necessarily be a screen. We were just talking about digital detox. But there may be some other things in your life that you need to make sure that you are taking a break from. And going back to what I started earlier talking about trauma, when there has been trauma in our lives, one of the things that we know that I know that sometimes those can be some of the hardest things to discuss. They can be very hard to discuss because you're careful about, with if I talk about it, will people judge me? Will they judge me if I reveal some of the things that happened to me as a child? Or will they judge me if they knew that I participated in this type of activity? Will they judge me if they knew that I used to do this in my past? Okay. And so, because of that, a lot of times we're quiet. A lot of times we don't share the things that have caused us to, sadness, or caused us to be traumatized, and caused us to have this feeling of sometimes of pending doom. Because, one of the things about trauma, it affects people in lots of different ways. And so I encourage you, as I am coming to a close, if you are experiencing any type of trauma, if whether it be acute trauma, chronic trauma, or complex, which means a combination of the three of them, find a person, that a mental health professional that you can talk to. If there is no shame in talking to a therapist, there is no shame in going to get yourself right mentally and emotionally. That's what the mental health professionals are there for. That's what the counselors are there for. That's what the therapists are there for. We go to school to learn all these different things of how to be able to walk alongside people when they are experiencing different things in their lives. And so I challenge you, if you have some things that's been lingering, find somebody to talk to. Find a trusted therapist that you can talk to. It's always good if you have a trusted adult. Some people prefer to go and talk to their pastor for pastoral counseling, but sometimes you need to go find a therapist. Sometimes you need to go find somebody who has been trained to help in those particular ways. Hello there, Sister Sherry. Find some people, find a person that has been trained to deal with walking alongside you to help you to deal with the situations that are in your life. I almost guarantee you that if you find the right person, if you find the right therapist, they can be a great help for you. To be able to get all of that stuff and that junk off of your mind, to be able to free yourself. Sometimes when we are seeking a therapist and we're talking about the past traumas in our life, sometimes it's the forgiveness that we need to come to the conclusion that we need to forgive some people. And sometimes we need to forgive ourselves, okay? Sometimes we can be our hardest enemy, and we may be able to forgive other people, but we may not be able to forgive ourselves. And then sometimes the struggle is, can you forgive other people? And if you can't forgive other people, if you cannot let that stuff go, then that's a weight on you that is only detrimental to you, because you're the one that's holding all of that stuff in. So free yourself, talk to somebody, get rid of all of the heavy weights that, have you just bogged down. Talk to somebody, find you a trusted adult, find you a trusted therapist, and let's talk about the things that's causing us to feel the way that we've been feeling. Again, most of the time when I'm talking about, the different things like this, and today I've been talking about it from a student or from a child standpoint, but also adults, grown people. We're walking around here with lots of stuff on us. It's got us so weighed down, and sometimes we can barely function. And it's because we haven't dealt with the things in our past. But you don't have to walk around like that. You don't have to walk around with your head hung down. You don't have to walk around feeling shamed or embarrassed or whatever. Pick your head up. Go ahead and get yourself taken care of and live to go on another day. And you want, when living to go on another day, you want to live in freedom. You don't want to live in bondage. So, again, as I wrap up today, and maybe I'll get back on this topic again, but I just wanted to share some of the things that we talked about today with our educators, making sure that they have a trauma-informed classroom so they'll know how to recognize when students walk through their door and what they need to do in order to make them feel safe, and how to develop that relationship and an environment that is warm and welcoming. Let me ask you a question as I am, and I keep wrapping it up. I keep saying I'm closing. But when's the last time that you went to a person's house or a person's home and it was so inviting? You walked through the door, they made you feel welcome. You walked through the door and you could smell the aroma, maybe the scents of the house. Maybe they were burning candles, or they were cooking something that made the house smell really good. Or and when they welcomed you in, it was like they truly wanted you to be in their space. And they said, "Here, have a seat. Sit here in this nice, comfortable chair. Make yourself at home. Do you need anything? Do you need a drink of water? Do you need coffee? Do you need tea? You want a snack or something like that?" When's the last time that someone invited you into their space, their home, as an adult, and they made you feel welcome? Well, that's the way we want our teachers to make our children feel. And as a parent and as a grandchildren, for me, if a teacher is doing that for my children and my grandchildren, then we're going to do pretty good. All right? Listen, you all, thank you all again for joining me on tonight. Let me see if I can find some music to take us out of here. I always try to make sure that I'm giving you a little bit, some nuggets that will help you to be able to go through the week. And if you have not subscribed to my channels, please go ahead and subscribe. Not only subscribe, but turn the notifications on so whenever I come on, you will get them. You will always know whenever there's something new uploaded, when I've uploaded something new, and you will always know that when I am live. So turn those notifications on. Become a subscriber. Not only become a subscriber, but share the information that I am sharing with you. If it's helping you, please pass it on so we can help somebody else. This is something that I definitely enjoy doing. And so we want to take as many of you all along with us for the ride. And let's just see what I have to talk about. All right, everybody. I hope everyone has enjoyed grandstanding with Mother Teresa. I've always enjoyed visiting with you all. And I will see you all on next Tuesday. Unless something comes up and I cannot come on, I will be here on next Tuesday. All right? Let's see if I can get this music going. There it is. I'm giving you all a little bit of time to enjoy this music. And I'm also waiting for my husband to come back in. I'm not sure where he's at. You know, when you're live, everything and anything can happen. So I'm waiting for my husband to come back in. And while I'm waiting, let me just tell you all the things that I was sharing with you all. Please pass it on. If you have some young people in your lives that is struggling with some things, let them know that not only should their teachers have a warm and welcoming place for them, but their entire campus should be a warm and welcoming place for them. If they are ever in need of any type of services for any type of emotional things, that they have their counselors there. Most campuses will actually have a counselor on their campus. Now, you may not have a student wellness interventionist. Excuse me, those are the ladies that work in my department. You may not necessarily have those, but in which they are specialized, that they work with our students to provide interventions for them. They may not have those, but they should have a counselor. One of the other, two of the other things that they may have at your campuses is that they may have communities and schools, which is a great organization that they provide case management and they help with students, provide some necessary basic needs, different resources for not only the student but for the families as well. So you may have your campus, your district may have communities and schools. Another resource that we have in my district is our KAIS workers, which are community resource specialists. They are contracted with us through Harris County, and they actually provide services for some of our students and our families that are in need. One of the other things that, and it seems like I'm just going to keep going for a little while longer, one of the other things that we are most fortunate to have in our district is that we have contracts with DePelchin Children's Services, because what we know is that our staff cannot see all of the students. They cannot provide interventions for all of our students that need some emotional support or mental health support. So we have the Harris Center. We also have DePelchin, as I stated before. We have T-Chat. T-Chat is something that is available throughout the state of Texas, and they provide virtual sessions for students. So I do know that we have some people that are listening to me that are in other parts of the state of Texas. T-Chat is a great benefit for students that are experiencing any type of mental health crisis and situation. Not only do we have T-Chat, but we also have one other thing, Spindletop, that you can actually utilize as well. So these are some things that you have available in your, hopefully you have available in your schools. And if you do not, please utilize what you have. All right. Okay, everybody, this is Mother Teresa, and I'm going to say we will see you all again on the next time. All right, bye-bye, everybody.